A miniature, papery sun was pressing on the palm of his hand, while the bag continued to retain its warmth. Leo strolled, not with the hurried shuffle of someone heading home, but with a steady, methodical stride, like a lone satellite wandering through the growing dusk of the suburban evening. With each stride, his thoughts were accompanied by a metronome. It wasn't for a movie that the popcorn was. In its whole, it was the event. Leo was his name, and this trek was a rite of passage for him. A weekly revolt against the quiet, high-definition cacophony of his home, where his parents spoke with one another via messages from different rooms, and the most significant explosion was the microwave completing its cycle. Therefore, on Fridays, he would get a bag of supernova splash popcorn from the old-fashioned kiosk in the park. This was the type of popcorn that came in a greasy, transparent bag, and was sprinkled with a frightening electric orange cheese powder that was meant to shine in the dark. But it did not. The ticket he needed was this popcorn. It is not to a movie theater, but rather to an altogether separate entertainment. As he went, the borders of the streets he was acquainted with started to become more pliable. The hum of a lawnmower in the distance gradually subsided, and it was replaced by a new type of static. With a mouthful of popcorn in his lips, the kernels crunched like little rockets. He grabbed a handful of popcorn. Once he had heard that each individual piece of popcorn includes a very little amount of water, and that when the popcorn is toasted, the water transforms into steam, which causes the pressure to increase until the hull can no longer hold it. This does not just get larger, rather it unfolds. As a result, it goes through a drastic metamorphosis in tiny, the pop. The music appeared to linger in the air, lingering at a longer and more opulent duration than it should have. Suddenly, the sodium vapor streetlight that was above him began to flicker, and for a fraction of a second it seemed to be nothing more than a guttering torch that was being held aloft by a stone gargoyle that was perched on the roof of a nearby building. When Leo blinked, he saw that the bulb was, once again, malfunctioning. There was no one he had ever told about this. It would be said that the cheese powder was having an effect on him. Another step was taken by him, and he had another handful. The crunch, the pop, a zing. That shimmering thing that the planet accomplished occurred once again. Mrs. Gable's home had a hedge that was properly groomed, yet it appeared to grow wild and thorny to the point where it became a barrier that protected not a well-manicured lawn, but rather a sleeping dragon's treasure. Before reverting back to Mr. Fluffkins, the lanky tabby from number 42, a cat that was sneaking through the shadows, transformed into a sleek, liquid panther. Its eyes shone with the wisdom of the old world. It was the popcorn that was vital. It was quite clear to Leo. Neither the flavor nor the salt was the issue. Rather, it was the sound. It was a tuning fork for reality, and the frequency of the crunch and the resonant pop were both quite noticeable. During the whole of this trek, for as long as the warmth remained contained inside the bag, the barrier that separated his reality from the one that was running just under it became more blurry. However, tonight had a distinct vibe about it. As if it were the moment before a rainstorm, the air was saturated with energy. The changes were more noticeable and persisted for a longer period of time. In his experience, the pavement under his feet seemed less like asphalt and more like flagstone that had been worn down over time. It was a cul-de-sac called Whispering Pines Way that he went into, which was the last length of his trek. However, there were neither pines nor whispers on this path. He took the last of the popcorn and put it into his mouth, relishing the last crunch that was caramelized with butter. And the globe continued to endure change. There was no longer any street lights. Instead of telephone poles, bioluminescent mushrooms clung to the gnarled, dark branches of trees that now stood in the spot where the poles had been. In their place, the homes had been replaced with twisted constructions made of lumber and framed with leaded glass. Candlelight flickered through the windows of the structures. Something wild, together with the scent of moist ground and wood smoke, permeated the air. In the middle of the cul-de-sac, where the asphalt should have been, there was a little carriage that was decorated with intricate details. It seemed to have been dropped from a great height since it was cracked, despite the fact that it was composed of dark wood and silver. Additionally, a gentle and frenzied scratching emanated from it. When Leo approached, his heart was beating like a frenzied drum against his ribs. From his fingers, the bag of popcorn, which was now empty, dangled in a limply manner. There was a little gap in the door of the carriage. He yanked it open with it. A creature was found within, tucked up in a nest made of shimmering, silky material. With hair the color of a nebula and wide, liquid eyes that contained the brightness of a faraway star, it was no larger than a rabbit and didn't even come close to being a rabbit. It was trembling, and one of its tiny wings, which resembled bats, was twisted at an angle that was excruciatingly uncomfortable. Instead of looking at Leo with terror, it stared at him with a deep and exhausted melancholy. Its attention then turned to the popcorn bag that was empty. In addition to letting forth a gentle, ringing whine, it used its nose to gently prod a little kernel husk that had been abandoned. The realization dawned on Leo, and it was both enormous and terrible. It wasn't simply a key that was the popcorn. It was used as fuel. It is a causer. There was no marketing trick involved in the supernova splash. Rather, it was a hint. It was a stardust-like creature that had been stranded by itself. The vessel had shattered, and its supply of energy had been drained. In addition, it had been attracted to the only energy signature that was comparable on this planet, which was the furious microscopic unfolding of 1,000 little supernovas contained inside a paper bag. There was no chance that the barrier had become thinner tonight. During the course of his weekly signal, a ship that was in difficulty had tugged it taut and furiously in an attempt to locate him. From the fearful and gorgeous creature, Leo's gaze shifted to the greasy and empty bag that he was holding in his hand. Suddenly, his escape routine turned into a search and rescue operation. No longer only a bystander between realms, the solitary little kid with the popcorn was now a participant. Only he was able to pick up on the call that was being made. He had just finished eating all of his snacks. As he came to a crouching position, he gently extended his hand. The beast jerked its head back, then remained motionless as it watched him. The texture of its fur was even more gentle than silence. "Okay," Leo murmured, maintaining his composure despite the fact that the world was swelling inside of his chest. "All right. Be not concerned. I have any idea where he stores the large kettle. We will need a bag that is of a larger size. This evening, the walk home would be different from today, because he wouldn't be walking by himself.